Welcome, one and all. Welcome, Julia. A special welcome to Shanaaz, as usual, my co host on this event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. And just a reminder, when we say wish I was here and we don't say wish you were here, it is all about engagement. It's all about, being present in our lives and taking the responsibility for enjoying every single aspect of our lives. And I mean the ups and downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, sad times, bad times, all of them rolling together, being in the flow of your life, and every minute counts, and living every single minute as if it's your last. So, Shanaaz spoke to us some time back, and we were using the Rugby World Cup as an analogy. And Shanaaz was one of the aspects that Shanaaz touched on was driving social cohesion through the team of life. And so I thought, well, okay, this is how we feed off what we talk about. And so that resonated with me amongst everything else that was shared, which is brilliant. And, you're always welcome to either listen to the playback on Clubhouse, or you can actually listen to the edited version on the Mufasa Coaching Practice YouTube channel. So what I in particular do is go and have a look at what books have been written on the specific topics, and I wanted to know about teams. And so many books have been written over the years, over many years, decades of it, on teams and leadership and so on. So I found a book on dream teams written by Shane Snow, subtitled "Working Together Without Falling Apart." So I'm going to launch straight into it. And the first topic that he really deals with within this dream teams framework is that he says that dream teams benefit from diversity of background, gender, and opinion. Now, some of these things are not just intuitive. We have been exposed to them in so many different ways, but it's amazing that over the years, there must be more than just a kernel of truth when people talk about diversity. And, within this diversity concept, and this is really, I'm so glad I've got Shanaaz with me today, because I know she's got a lot to say on this topic, especially around the diversity. But he just talks about that diversity will increase the chances of finding the right solution. And when I think about this, I always think about polishing a diamond. Or how a diamond is polished, and a diamond is so multifaceted, and that's what provides its brilliance. And that's what diversity in a team actually creates. And so therefore dream teams have a diverse composition. And if a team is more diverse, the decisions that are presented will have been strength tested for success. Which means, when you all sing from the same hymn sheet at the very beginning, and everybody agrees without testing thoughts and opinions, ideas, or suggestions, this opportunity to strength test decisions are therefore avoided or not taken up on. And so diversity, once again, not rocket science. It's just not something that we consciously embrace all the time, but diversity brings new ways of thinking. A greater range of diverse opinions from different backgrounds will challenge people to reevaluate entrenched perspectives and prejudices. You see, being in a team, and especially a dream team, is coaching yourself, allowing yourself to be open to understand other people's ideas that are specifically contrary to your own. You need to embrace the fact that, when other people are always diagonally opposed or opposite in terms of what you were thinking, the idea is so contrary to your way of thinking, is to actually embrace that and say, that is my growth area to be challenged. And the key is something that I often say to people in general and to my clients, is that, to understand somebody's opinion takes effort, it takes patience, it takes a kind of curiosity that brings you to that place of appreciation where you can literally go, yeah, I now finally understand where you come from, what you are saying, what your point of view is, and that is absolutely wonderful. You still don't have to agree with it. The key would be is to understand it. So one of the things that, way back when, more than 20 years ago, when I did some research, I actually was very interested in whether or not the diversity of boards, right? Board of directors creates any share price value. And it was actually quite fascinating because the theory just supported the fact that homogeneous boards are not as robust and resilient in terms of composition because there's no opportunity to challenge thinking. Going with the flow. This is where going with the flow is an issue. And astute investors would actually examine the boards of directors and look at who actually is on, and so the profiles of the people on them are very important. So we're talking about across the spectrum when we talk about diversity, and this influenced share price because chances are, as an investor, you are taking the risk, but you want to minimize your risk, but at the same time understanding that your return on investment is the reason why you invest in the first place. But you want to, we know nothing in life is guaranteed, especially not in investment, but this is the prudent investor that would look at what a board of directors is composed of, and therefore influences their decision to invest and sometimes how much to invest. So I was wondering, Shanaaz, if what are your thoughts around this particular aspect as far as Shane Snow is concerned?
I agree with him, and I've been in terms of that. The I think that your team definitely does need to be diverse, and I think that um I mean not only corporate teams, I think, but general organizational teams, and you can see that the diverse opinions result in more creative problem solving and solutions, and also then that means that you can overcome obstacles that the organizations experience. So I work a lot in the NPO field, and so what you find is that there's a big shortage of resources, and I find that when I work with these teams, the way they all are very similar, they really struggle with being creative problem solvers, and they tend to be very insular. So what tends to happen is that I've been working with a team for a while, and someone new joined, and immediately this person who was different, not of the same background to the rest of the team, she comes from another part of the country as well. Immediately that brought a fresh breath of fresh air to the team, and they were starting to think differently. But I want to add that it is a bit of a challenge to sometimes get there, because I was thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking of when we study group work in social work. So we talk about how groups start, and there's a stage called the norming and storming, meaning when you form a group, what tends to happen is initially there's lots of arguments and things going on as the group tries to find similar points of view, and I think that maybe sometimes teams get stuck at that stage where they are going for each other, and find it very difficult to move beyond that. But absolutely it's worthwhile to have this diverse background and challenge each other.
Well, it's interesting is that the next point is about for a team to work well, a little bit of tension is actually quite helpful. So, one can actually expect that people from different backgrounds, different points of view, doesn't matter what the differences are, will bring this tension, this kind of a little bit of friction in the room. And now, what he says is that from relationship studies, it has been shown that frequent arguments aren't actually an indicator of long term problems. I wonder what our listeners will say to that. What's much worse actually is when partners stop talking to one another. And that is relationships, whether it's business relationships, formal relationships, romantic relationships, platonic relationships, family relationships. When the talking stops, this is when tension becomes dysfunctional. And that conflict is a sign that people are prepared to find a solution. Isn't it an amazing reframe? And organizational silence, as a result, can result in problems down the line. And he terms this as being cognitive. And he uses this example from the Wright brothers, the famous aviation pioneers. Is their strategy is to avoid full-blown hostility, because even as brothers, but their points of view were filtered through their own specific beliefs and values. And but what they particularly did very well and deliberately is that they would swap sides during an argument and try to argue each other's points. And this way they could detach and reassess their own natural stubbornness and argue against the points rather than the person. Is in the depersonalization, is to make the time for that rather than focusing on, but my idea is the best idea, is the right idea. And sometimes when ego plays such a huge role, we believe we are right because whatever brought us to that point, whether it's our credentials, our experience, how we see ourselves, our sense of importance, whether we have superiority complexes, inferiority. The point is to be able to realize that your point of view is just one aspect. You see it in one way. Polish the diamond, you got to it. And in Proverbs 27:17, it says that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens one another. So, none of us likes conflict, confrontation, and we always, I think there's a sort of a basic instinct, and in Shanaaz, this is obviously where your training, your background can support this. But I'm just talking anecdotally, as to say, rather than avoiding conflict, and seeing it as necessarily negative, is once again to reframe conflict as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to understand things better, to see different points of view. If you want a helicopter view or eagle's view of any situation, embrace diverse viewpoints and don't be afraid of the tension it creates. As long as you are prepared to put yourself in another person's shoes, that will dissolve the tension. And if you want to have relationships where it is easy, there's absolutely no friction, etc., then you got to ask yourself: are you a piece of iron in somebody else's life, so that you can sharpen them up, so there's a growth opportunity, so there's opportunity to do things better, bigger, greater, brighter even. So, whether because of the way we wired, that sort of default state of, all right, we want harmony, we want peace, and therefore frown upon dissenters, where we should be looking for the people who are deliberately, not even deliberately, it's just that they come from different backgrounds. And so you got to embrace the whole spectrum, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's ethnicity, religious views, all of them embrace that, and don't say, well, I want harmony, and in order for me to have harmony, I want to surround myself with people who think like me, and that is how you set yourself up for failure. Any comments, Shanaz?
No, I absolutely agree with you, and it's not only my view, but I know it sounds, like I said, it sounds almost counterproductive, but in mental health, the professionals will encourage you to engage with conflict, and it's about being able to have the skills to negotiate for yourself. The and here's where assertiveness comes in as well. And what you actually find is that those who avoid conflict are the ones who struggle. They struggle with self-esteem. Sometimes they struggle to have their voice heard. I tend to find that those who avoid conflict, there's this connection with people pleasing, and there's a whole set of mental health issues, or not. I mean, it depends on, of course, the extent, but there are connections between people pleasing and things like ulcers and stress, depend on how bad a people pleaser you are, and not having your voice heard. So as a mental health practitioner, we encourage people to engage with conflict, and in fact, I forgot his name as you were talking. I was thinking of one of the relationship experts that I like to listen to and engage with their work. It's a couple, um, and what they say is like, conflict is actually healthy, and you would also that they would be concerned where there are no, there's absolutely no conflict in a relationship. And this goes, like I said, for personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, as well as corporate and work relationships, team, within the team. And I can tell you that in a team that I worked, when there was very little conflict, it actually wasn't very helpful. And there was a lot of perhaps anger and resentment below the avoidance of conflict. And people, you don't get your needs met, and those were one of the reasons that I left that organization. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. People normally leave because there's way too much conflict. You didn't have enough.
That, I didn't think about it in that way, but yes, it's and I think it's, as I said, it's connected to having your needs met. And maybe it's about feeling. I think that people have this idea that conflict is bad. Maybe the way we were raised as children, to not engage in it.
Yeah, and that's quite correct. I'm intrigued. You typed and said you'd love that scripture. Iron sharpens iron, and that's why, as people, we sharpen each other. So it's one of your favorite scriptures. So, what is your just briefly? What is your take on it? It was interesting to see what view you have of it.
So I'm a big debater. Sometimes my siblings don't appreciate it because they feel that I create confrontation when one of them want peace. So, and I make it challenging for people. So I think so my view is that actually, in terms of that, I just think it's healthy to um to have your to negotiate, and in terms of that, you don't necessarily, you need to manage the situation or know the context. So I'm not going to debate and engage with negotiations with every comment, but if this is something that is important to me, then I will be concerned that there's peace, when actually maybe in terms of my own needs and where I'd like a situation to go to that's not necessarily healthy or helpful. And so I tend to, I'm not a troublemaker. I was gonna say that. So but I am confident enough to say something in in an assertive way without offending someone. And I think that as someone working in in a mental health field, in social work, I've needed to learn those skills, and they didn't come easily.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks for that, Shanaaz. Um, I'm going to run through some of these others, maybe not pause too much on them, but the third thing that he speaks about is that the power of playing together cannot be underestimated. So you spoke about how rugby, soccer, drives social cohesion. And he highlights the fact that research shows that playing together makes the individual see the other participants as part of an in group, and that you actually feel less threatened by your opponents and actually more empathetic toward them. And players treat each other with less suspicion, and they trust each other far more. And I saw this now, there was another World Cup on the go, and that's a cricket World Cup. And I think it's probably far more on display because I watch a lot of cricket. I like international cricket. And what I saw now in the World Cup was just the spirit of the game has so much improved, where the players from the different countries, they play in all the different leagues, and then they play with each other in these different leagues, no matter whether it's Australia or Pakistan or India or in the Caribbean. Some of them play in leagues in America and in South Africa as well, and they become such good teammates. So even though they compete in such a way, the whole hostility between the bowler and the batsman is no longer there. They're laughing. The real sportsman's or sporting gesture to be in terms of just the different players. And I mean, the key would be is because they're playing together, sharing all kinds of things, like they're sharing a goal together, they're sharing strategy, and they see each other as people rather than just opponents. So even when they are playing the game, they know they're playing the game. It's amazing how when they do well, whether it's a batsman or a bowler, how they congratulate each other, and yet they are opponents in the game. And how does one actually do this is in all relationships across the board, commercial, formal, whatever the case might be, is do you make time to play together, and specifically cross-functionally? And therefore, I think you're willing, and I think the thing that I want to really that catches my attention is that's feeling a little bit more empathetic towards others. So feeling a little bit more empathetic towards others, go play with your team. If your team is set up to be diverse, do or engage in activities. I know team building activities. We do that, and sometimes come out of COVID, I'm not too sure whether we've gone straight back to where all these activities are being planned for and people go out and do them. But you cannot underestimate that team building activity, having fun together in particular, and and your willingness to listen to somebody else's point of view, your willingness to put yourself in the other person's shoes to really extract the maximum benefit of an alternative view is cannot be underestimated. And here's a couple of other things: is when a team is stuck in its old ways, a dream team will go looking for fresh blood, ideas, and opinions that can kick start it into action. So basically, who are the types of people that can really challenge our thinking and go to find them? Is that innovation quickly can become stagnation. So winning teams introduce someone into a team who would challenge the views of all the others. And I can think about what the people that we can call mavericks or devil advocates, so that we embrace every single opportunity to test an argument against cross-examination. We mustn't be afraid that just because your thinking is being challenged, that you are being challenged as a person. You are not less than by embracing the fact that somebody else has got an opposing view. And so, once again, several of the other things and ideas that appear bad at first glance can lead to new, useful organizations. And actually, he gives us sort of an example, and I think I'll share it, is that uh, city planners in a town called Winooski in Vermont, and I know we all know where Winooski is, came up with a wacky ideal in 1979. They wanted to reduce the town's ever-increasing heating bill by covering the town with a dome through federal funds. It gained nationwide coverage and was ridiculed to the extent that the then president Jimmy Carter gave orders to stop the dome construction. However, this increased media profile to such an extent that it helped the town to secure the funding for a new hydroelectric plant nearby. And it was the second largest funding amount per capita in the history of the US. So the town was able to heat itself more economically, and all happened because one bad idea got the tongues wagging. Now, it's an extreme idea, but why are we so afraid when we want to brainstorm? And you can actually say to people, well, the rule is every idea counts. I can see in teams, when I say this, they don't really believe me because they're there auditing. Either they self-auditing or they're auditing each other and say, oh no, that is a real stupid idea. And listen, the whole reason for brainstorming specifically is letting all ideas count is specifically here, and he makes the point that sometimes the idea that you come up with might not linearly lead to a positive outcome, but you never know what the spin-offs might be, so embrace them. Then he speaks about superordinate goals that get people from opposing sides to come together and work towards a common end result. He says superordinate goals, just explained it, and mutual respect assist unifying teams. Studies show that as diverse groups are given more challenges and collaborated more frequently, they began trusting each other's intentions. They started to empathize, and so a deeper sense of respect for the other group was cultivated. And yes, I remember when I was still very much in grade 12, then it was called Matric, went on to a Felt and Flay leadership camp, and people from Pietermaritzburg and Johannesburg got together. Now, let me tell you, there was an explosion. I've run out of time, can't share exactly what happened there. And I'm just going to conclude in this way. Two more is that members of dream teams have intellectual humility. Don't be afraid to share life stories with one another, and this leads to empathy. Once again, once there's empathy, willingness to listen to one another. So in conclusion, if we are respectful, empathetic, open-minded, ready to be challenged, and willing to listen to dissent, then the true dream team can emerge and achieve the very best results. Shanaaz, you have the opportunity to bring our session to a close with some final comments.
Thank you. I was going to say, I hadn't heard the term intellectual humility, but I really love it. And I think that it's that ability to um, be okay with yourself still, and not feel threatened by others. And you'll find that when you're okay with everyone's viewpoint and okay with being challenged, that's actually where the richness of that diverse team comes through. And I think it does require that intellectual humility. I think I need to use that term with the academics.
Wonderful. And and with that, thank you very much, Shanaaz. Thank you, Julia. And for those of you listening, as usual, take one little aspect, be challenged by it, and even as Shanaaz said, is to introduce it in your conversation, but be open, be willing to listen. Try and put yourself in somebody else's shoes, try and argue their points on their behalf until you clear, or you get to the point of fully understanding where they're coming from. So until next time, if we don't speak to you again for the rest of the year, we wish you all the very best, a good festive season, and we're looking forward to a 2024 that's a vast improvement on a 2023. So bye for now, until we chat again.